Hello, this is Dave and Dave's Radio Shack. Today's video is about the recreation of my very first ham radio contact from 50 years ago, made in March of 1975. I studied for my ham radio license just using book learning at the time in the fall of '74 and taught myself Morse, and by December I was ready to take my novice test. So I went to C&G Electronics in downtown Tacoma, which was the local ham store at the time, and there I took my CW test, 5 words per minute, and passed easily. Then I went on to take my written test out at WA7HTN, Craig Larson's house, and passed the written exam as well. Back then it took a long time to get your license, so he mailed the forms into the FCC, and in the meantime my dad had told me that if I passed my test that he would buy me a radio. And there were some criteria, though, that were a little difficult to work with. My dad wouldn't buy anything used, and the budget was only $100, which there weren't a lot of choices to buy a radio that would get me on HF for $100 or less that wasn't used gear. So the only one that was available was the Heathkit HW7. Now this is a Heathkit HW8, but the 7 looks very similar to this and was the predecessor, and it was $79.95. So my dad was okay with buying that kit. We ordered it, and I pretty much taught myself how to solder and how to build from that kit, just following the very good instructions in the Heathkit manual, and it worked perfectly when it was complete. I didn't have any mentors or Elmers to help me with this kind of stuff. I had never met another ham, and I only knew about ham radio just from book learning. So it was all pretty new to me, and I was very, very isolated from the ham world at the time. And eventually in March, my license came, or the first week of March, and having listened extensively with my HW7, I was copying lots of stations on the air and was able to figure out how the bands kind of worked and that sort of thing. When I got my license, I immediately started calling CQ. I remember the day I got the license in the mail after school and sat down and started calling CQ until my fingers were numb. And I did that every day for days, and I didn't get a single contact. Of course, the radio was only about 1 watt, and my antenna was not very good. So I convinced my dad to take me to a meeting of the radio club at Tacoma, and there I met a number of local hams, most notably Nick Winter, WA7IVO, and he was about 8 or 9 years older than me, and he came over to my house to look at my setup and figure out why I'm not making contacts, and he shinnied up the poplar tree outside my window, and I went up in the tree with him, and he showed me where my cold solder joint of trying to solder antenna wire outdoors in the winter had failed, and he taught me techniques to properly solder antenna wire outdoors in a tree in winter, and we got the antenna working quite well. And that was my problem all along, was just a very poorly soldered antenna center insulator. So Nick went home, and on the evening of March 17th, which was that day, at 8:16 local time, I called Nick, WA7IVO, and he answered me on 40 meters, and we set about having a 33-minute QSO, my very first contact for 33 minutes, which wasn't bad for a brand new ham, CW only, having never done anything with ham radio prior, and I was very happy with that 33-minute QSO. So Nick and I became pretty good friends in ham radio. I thought he was the smartest kid on the block, and several times in the ensuing years he helped me with other technical issues that I was having, and he was a great guy. And we stayed friends all the way up until the present day. And so as the 50th anniversary of that first QSO started getting closer, he and I started talking about having a reenactment of that, where I would use my HW8 rather than the HW7. I have a 7, but it's a rather poorly performing radio, and I decided to just use my HW8 since it's a more pleasurable radio to use. And he would be on the very same Drake B line that he had the contact with me back in 1975. That was the plan. He ended up, ultimately, we were going to use his Elecraft K4. There were some issues getting the B line up and going. On February 7th of this year, 2025, we did a test run of the setup and made sure everything worked, and good signals both ways, and everything seemed to be well on track for a recreation of that contact on March 17th of this year at 8:16 local time. Unfortunately, Nick passed away suddenly on March 6th, 11 days short of our planned reenactment contact, which was very sad for everybody involved. I lost a very good friend. The club lost a very good friend. The world lost a very good person. Nick was a great guy and a very good friend of mine. So I decided that in honor of Nick, that I would still commemorate the 50th anniversary of my first contact, and I invited Randy WB4 SPB from the radio club, who was also a very good friend of mine and very good friend of Nick's, if he would be the other end of the QSO, and he very readily agreed. And he would be using the actual Drake B line that would be similar to what Nick used 50 years prior. And so what this video is the real-time QSO that took place on March 17th at this station with this HW8 radio, commemorating the 50th anniversary of my very first QSO. So it's made in memory and honor of Nick, who later became K7MO, who will be missed by many, and I wish he was still around, but I know that he would be very glad to know that we still went through with the contact and still made it happen. So that's what the video is about. Thanks for watching, and what you'll see next is the entire QSO in real time.